They waited until dessert plates were cleared. My father folded his napkin once. Precise. Like he was closing a meeting. Then he stood. "Briar," he said, calm enough to sound rehearsed. "This house needs to come back to the family." I laughed, a short reflex I couldn't stop. "That's not funny." He didn't smile. My mother didn't look at me. My sister, Tamsin, leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, already distant. Right then, before anything else, I need to be clear about what this story is and why it's being told. The entire content of the video is a fictional work created by the writing team of the Revenge Pulse channel, intended to reflect common conflicts in families and society, helping viewers recognize their emotions and choose a more positive way of living. "This is my house," I said. "I bought it. I paid the down payment. I signed the mortgage alone." Father nodded, as if I had just confirmed something obvious. "You did well. No one's denying that. But a house like this isn't meant for one person. It's an asset. It belongs where it can be managed properly." My mother stood and walked toward the back hallway. I heard the soft click of the lock behind her. Not loud, not dramatic, intentional. "Don't do this," I said. "You don't get to decide where I live." Tamsin pushed her chair back and disappeared from the dining room. When she returned, she was dragging a green suitcase. "My suitcase. We packed your essentials," she said, voice flat, "just to keep this clean." Something in my chest snapped. I stood so fast my chair scraped the floor. "You went through my things." Father held up a hand, not to stop me, but to slow the moment. "Lower your voice." I pulled my phone from my pocket. "I'm calling the police." That was when his expression changed. Not anger, certainty. "You can," he said, "and tomorrow morning, we'll file for a temporary protective order." My breath caught. "For what reason?" "For your own safety," my mother said from the hallway. "You've been very emotional." I looked at each of them. No one flinched. "You're lying," I said. "You're trying to take my house. This is a family matter," Father replied. "And if law enforcement shows up tonight, we'll explain that you're unstable and refusing to leave." The words landed exactly where they were meant to. I stepped toward the front door. Father shifted just enough to block my path without touching me. "Don't make this worse," he said quietly. "You don't want a record. I understood then. Any fight I put up would be used against me. I didn't hand over my keys. I wasn't asked to." As I stepped outside, my mother placed a different set of keys on the table behind me. "The locks were changed this afternoon," she said. "Your copy doesn't work anymore." The door closed. Not slammed, just closed. I stood on the porch, shaking. The house lit behind the glass like I had never lived there at all. If this moment feels familiar, if you've ever been pushed out of your own space and told it was for your own good, stay with me. Sometimes the truth doesn't start loud. Sometimes it starts with a door quietly locking behind you. I drove without direction until my hands stopped shaking. When I finally pulled over, the engine kept running, like it didn't trust me to stay still. My phone buzzed against my thigh. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Then I answered. "Hello, Ms. Calloway," a woman said. Professional, steady. "This is Natalie from Front Range Mortgage Services. I'm calling regarding a flagged request on your account." My grip tightened on the steering wheel. What kind of request? "There was an attempt earlier today to update ownership information and add additional parties to your mortgage." The words landed heavy. Who requested that there were 2 names listed, Edmund Calloway and Lenore Calloway. I stared at the windshield, the streetlights blurring. I didn't authorize anything. I never shared access. There was a pause, brief but deliberate. That's why the request was flagged. It didn't come through the secure portal, and the documentation didn't match your file. So what does that mean? I asked. "It means no changes were made," she said. "You are still the sole legal owner of the property, no co-owners, No power of attorney. Nothing shared. My chest loosened. Just slightly. We've locked the account and logged the attempt. She continued. You'll receive a formal notice by email and mail. We recommend you don't engage directly with anyone regarding this matter. I swallowed. Thank you for calling. Of course, she said. And Ms. Calloway, if you notice anything else unusual, contact us immediately. The call ended. The silence afterward felt different, sharper, cleaner. They had tried, quietly, confidently, and they had failed. I pulled back onto the road, my thoughts lining up one by one, the packed suitcase, the changed locks, the threat of a protective order. None of it was impulsive, none of it was emotional, it was procedural. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text. Rowan, are you safe? I called her instead. They tried to take my house. I said the moment she answered. There was no gasp, no interruption, just her breathing on the other end. Tell me what happened, she said. I told her everything, the dinner, the threat, the call. When I finished, she spoke carefully. Briar, this wasn't a fight. This was a plan. I know. I said. They thought I wouldn't notice. They underestimated you, she replied. That's their mistake. I ended the call and turned toward home, not to go inside, but to see it once more with clear eyes. Whatever they thought they had taken from me, the paperwork said otherwise. I parked across the street and sat there longer than I meant to. The house looked the same from the outside. That almost made it worse. I crossed the lawn and tried the key anyway. It slid in. It didn't turn. I tried once more. Slower. Nothing. The door opened before I knocked. A woman stood there, early 20s, wearing a hoodie that wasn't mine and socks on hardwood I had scrubbed myself. She looked at me like she'd been warned. You're Briar, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, I replied. This is my house. She hesitated, then stepped back half an inch, still blocking the doorway. I was told you wouldn't be coming back. Told by who? Lenore and Edmund, she said. They said you left voluntarily, that you were not in a good place. I felt my jaw lock. They changed the locks. They said it was temporary. She added quickly. They told me not to let you inside. Behind her, I caught a glimpse of the entryway. My rug was gone. The framed photo of me and Rowan had been replaced with a landscape print I didn't recognize. I need to get my things, I said. She shook her head, apologetic but firm. I was told not even to give you access to personal items. I stepped back onto the porch. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I refused to give them the scene they were counting on. As I turned away, a voice drifted from the neighboring yard. Morning, Briar. Mrs. Kavanagh stood at her fence, holding her dog's leash. She looked uncomfortable, like someone forced into a role they hadn't chosen. Hi, I said. She glanced at the house, then back at me. They've been in and out for weeks, always when you were gone. Weeks. I figured it wasn't my place, she added softly. I nodded once. Thank you for telling me. I walked back to my car, my steps measured. When I closed the door, my phone buzzed. Rowan. Did you go back? I typed with steady hands. Me. Someone else is living there. The reply came instantly. Rowan. Then it's worse than we thought. I started the engine and pulled away. Not fast, not dramatic. Behind me, the house stood silent, already dressed in someone else's version of my life. Rowan didn't ask questions when I arrived. She opened the door, stepped aside, and let me in like I still belonged somewhere. I sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug I wasn't drinking from. They locked me out, I said. They put someone else in my house. Rowan leaned against the counter. How long, I don't know. My voice caught, then steadied. The neighbor said weeks. She didn't react. That was what broke me. This wasn't a blow-up. Rowan said carefully. This was organized. I pressed my lips together. They threatened a protective order. Called me unstable. Rowan nodded once. That's not panic. That's leverage. Her words slid into place with a memory I hadn't touched in years. I was 22, I said slowly. Still in school. I came home one weekend to get paperwork notarized. I passed the den and heard my dad say my name. Rowan didn't interrupt. He said, "She'll sign." I swallowed. My sister laughed. Said I never pushed back. I had told myself it was nothing. Taxes, insurance, something boring and adult. I didn't ask what they meant. I said, I didn't want to know. Rowan pulled out her chair and sat across from me, because knowing would have changed everything. I nodded, because then I would have had to stop believing they meant well. Silence settled between us, heavy but clean. They packed my suitcase. I added, the one I used when I left for college. Rowan's jaw tightened. They rehearsed this. The word hit harder than anything else she'd said. I need proof, I said. Not just feelings. Not just memory. Rowan stood and walked to the bookshelf by the window. She reached behind a row of paperbacks and pulled out her laptop. You installed cameras when you bought the house, she said. You told me it helped you feel safe. I stared at the screen as she set it in front of me. They back up automatically. She continued. If they were inside before tonight, you'll see it. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the trackpad. What if I don't want to see it? I said. Rowan met my eyes. Then they keep owning the story. I logged in. The first clip loaded. My mother stood in my office, opening drawers like she was inventorying supplies. Rowan didn't speak. Neither did I. But something inside me shifted, quiet and irreversible, as the past finally lined up with the present and stopped pretending it was an accident. The law office smelled like paper and old coffee. Margot Keene shook my hand once and didn't ask how I was holding up. Tell me exactly what happened, she said, already opening a legal pad. I did. I kept it clean. Dates, actions, words used. When I finished, she looked at me over her glasses. This isn't a family disagreement, she said. This is attempted property theft using coercive control. Rowan exhaled beside me. Margot slid a folder across the desk. We start with ownership. You bought the house alone. Yes. Down payment was $92,000. Mortgage in my name only. She nodded. And you've never granted power of attorney? Never. Good, she said. Then everything else is noise. Back at Rowan's apartment, we opened my cloud storage. The camera footage loaded in neat rows, each clip time-stamped. The first video showed my mother in my home office. Calm, methodical, she opened drawers, closed them, made notes on a yellow pad. No hesitation, no fear. She looks like she belongs there, Rowan said quietly. The next clip showed my father unplugging my router and replacing it with his. He tested the signal, nodded once, and sat in my chair like he was trying it on. My sister appeared in another frame, lifting framed photos from the mantel. She slid out my picture and replaced it with one of her and our parents. I stopped the video. They weren't sneaking. I said, they were settling in. Rowan didn't argue. Another file caught my eye, a voicemail, dated 2 weeks before the dinner. I pressed play. Once she's out, Tamsin's voice said, bored and efficient. Don't let her back in. Not even for the albums. I ended the playback and stared at the screen. She didn't sound angry. I said, she sounded finished. Rowan folded her arms, because she thought this was done. I forwarded the footage and voicemail to Margot with no explanation. She replied minutes later, this is strong. Document everything. Do not engage directly. I opened a new folder and named it Evidence. Inside, I saved each clip, labeled by date and time. I added the mortgage statement confirming sole ownership. I added the bank's fraud notice. When I closed the laptop, my hands were steady. They had tried to erase me quietly. I was done being quiet back. The alert came just after dawn. I was still on Rowan's couch when my phone buzzed, sharp and insistent. I sat up and read the notification twice before it settled. New credit inquiry detected. I opened the report with fingers that no longer shook. There were 2 entries, one from a department store I hadn't shopped at in over a decade, another from a credit card issuer offering a limit of $10,000. Both applications were under my name, but not my address. Rowan leaned over my shoulder. "That's fraud." "Yes," I said, "and it's not subtle." I scrolled further. The access log listed an internet address. The location matched my parents' house. "They're using what I gave them," I said quietly. Rowan straightened. "What do you mean I pulled up my email archive?" Messages I hadn't opened in years surfaced easily. "Mom, can you send your social security number? The accountant needs it to double-check something." "Dad, forward me your work form. I just want to make sure you're filing correctly." I had sent everything because it was easier than pushing back. Because I thought cooperation meant safety. "They didn't stop with the house," Rowan said. "They're going after your entire identity." I forwarded the credit report and emails to Margot. Her reply came fast. "This moves us out of civil dispute. This is criminal exposure. We file immediately." I called her. "They're escalating." I said, "Yes," she replied. "And that's a mistake on their part. What do we do next?" "We lock down your credit. Then we prepare for retaliation." I stared at the wall as she spoke. "They already threatened a protective order. They'll try again," Margot said. "This time, they'll claim concern. Concern is their favorite cover." Rowan took my phone when I finished the call. "You don't answer them anymore." I wasn't planning to. My screen lit up again. A voicemail notification. No name. I didn't play it. Not yet. I saved it. Forwarded it to Margot, unopened. "They want me rattled," I said. Rowan nodded. "Then don't give them the satisfaction." I leaned back against the couch and closed my eyes. They had taken my space. They had tried for my house. Now they were reaching for my name. And I was done letting them touch anything that belonged to me. The email arrived without a greeting. No subject line, no message. Just an attached audio file labeled private. Rowan looked up from the table. "Do you know who sent it?" "No," I said, "but I know who's in it." I pressed play. At first, there was only the hum of a car engine. Then my father's voice came through, calm and precise, like he was outlining a quarterly plan. "We start with the keys," he said. "Once she's out, change the locks immediately. Slowly shift everything so it looks natural." My sister laughed, light and unbothered. "She'll cry first. She'll call a lawyer." My father replied, "But by then, the narrative will already be set. Family matter. Emotional instability." It won't hold. Rowan didn't move. Neither did I. Another voice joined in. "My mother's. Make sure the utilities are under our names before she tries to come back." My father answered without hesitation. "Already scheduled." The recording continued. Details. Timing. Who would handle what? Not a single raised voice. Not one word of doubt. I stopped the audio. "They practiced this," Rowan said. "They rehearsed it." I replied, like I wasn't real. I saved the file to my laptop, then to an external drive, then to cloud storage under a new folder labeled Audio Evidence. Rowan watched me. "You're not shaking. I'm past that." I forwarded the recording to Margot. She called within minutes. "This is significant," she said. "They've just handed us intent." "What happens now?" I asked. "We file an emergency motion," she replied. "We attach everything. Deed, mortgage records, camera footage, the audio. We request a temporary restraining order and formal review." I closed my eyes. "They're going to say I provoked this." "They can try," Margot said. "But this recording speaks for itself." After the call, my phone lit up again. A missed call from my father. Then another. Then a text from my mother. Lenore. We need to talk. This has gone too far. I didn't respond. Instead, I printed the audio transcript and slid it into a folder. The words looked different on paper, heavier, permanent. Rowan touched my arm. They thought you'd stay quiet. I did. I said, for years. I stacked the evidence neatly, aligned the pages, and clipped them together. Not anymore. The courtroom was quiet in a way that felt intentional, like the room itself was waiting to see who would speak first. My father sat at the defense table, posture straight, hands folded. My mother stared at the surface in front of her as if it could still protect her. Tamsin crossed her legs and adjusted her sleeve, already preparing to be seen a certain way. Margot stood when the judge entered. She didn't waste time. Miss Calloway is the sole legal owner of the property. She said, no co-signers, no shared debt, no power of attorney. My father rose next. We were trying to protect family assets, he said evenly. Our daughter has been under a great deal of stress. Margot didn't look at him. She handed a document to the clerk. This is the payoff statement confirming exclusive ownership. This is the bank's fraud report. This is footage showing unauthorized entry. The judge glanced through the papers. Mr. Calloway, did you attempt to add your name to the mortgage? I deny any criminal intent. My father replied. If Breyer had listened, none of this would have escalated. The judge's gaze sharpened. That wasn't the question. Tamsin spoke up then. We were only helping organize the house. It was always meant to stay in the family. Margot lifted a printed still from the footage. It showed Tamsin removing a framed photo from my mantel, sliding my face out of view. You believed it was yours, the judge said, yet your name does not appear on the deed. Is that correct? Tamsin didn't answer. It was my turn. I stood, placed my hand on the rail, and spoke slowly. I purchased the house alone. I paid every installment myself. My family entered without permission, changed the locks, and told others I was unstable when I objected. I paused. The silence held. They didn't just take my house, I said. They rehearsed my absence. The judge nodded once. The court finds that Miss Calloway is the sole legal owner of the property. A temporary restraining order will remain in place. An inquiry into financial misconduct is opened. My father inhaled sharply. My mother didn't look up. Tamsin's hands clenched in her lap. Outside, Margot handed me a fresh set of keys. You did exactly what you needed to, she said. I closed my fingers around the metal. Not because I had won, because I had been believed. The house was quiet when I unlocked the door. Not empty. Just waiting. Rowan followed me inside and stopped. It feels different, she said. It's supposed to, I replied. I moved through the rooms slowly, not inspecting, not fixing. I gathered what didn't belong to me anymore and placed it in a box. Not out of anger, out of clarity. On the kitchen counter, I found a note in my mother's handwriting. We did what we thought was best. I read it once, folded it, and set it aside. Later, I burned it in the sink and watched the paper curl into nothing. Rowan leaned against the doorway. You okay? I am, I said, and I meant it. That morning, I changed the locks. I installed a new security system. I chose where the photos went. I decided who was welcome. At brunch, Rowan raised her mug. To chosen family. I smiled. To boundaries. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been told to stay quiet for the sake of peace, stay with us. Share your thoughts. Sometimes telling the truth out loud is how we finally take our space back.